Authors Press.
Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. And on the line with us today, we have Grandpa Don Draayer. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, The Adventures of Big Dog, Troubles and Triumph. And listen, if you guys want to gather everything that Don has to offer, do yourself a favor and head directly to his personal site. And check out DonDraayer.com. That's DonDraayer.com. There you'll find more information on Don Draayer himself. You'll find more information on this book, as well as find exactly where to purchase the book as well. And I will say, Don was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, Authors Press Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, do yourself a favor and contact our great friends over there at Authors Press. You can find out more information on them at authorspress.com. Sit back, strap in, get ready for a wonderful ride, but a fantastic education as well. Don, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest. How are you?
I'm fine, Mr. Cole. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, listen, the pleasure is all ours. We're very much looking forward not only to embarking upon this fun journey with you, learning about your characters, but also that underlying message. I think there's so much wisdom, there's so much value to be gained from that we're really looking forward to stealing some of that wisdom from you today, Don. Now, I know we have so much information to cover, but before we go into the book, let's hold off slightly. Start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself and your background, please.
Well, thank you. I grew up on a family farm in southern Minnesota. My parents were vegetable growers and immigrants, and it was very clear early in my life that they expected me to pull my weight. So I was outside working with my mother and my father on this farm, and the whole idea of service to others, about just taking care of yourself, was very important in their lives and was going to have to be important in mine too. So they modeled this value of serving one another in a family sense. And that kind of trickled over into my educational experience. If you want to get along in life, you want to become educated, you have to apply yourself in school, you have to give your best effort, you have to listen to others. There are certain values that have to be incorporated fully in your life, and then good things will return to you in spades, and they did in my life. My mother in particular did it. One quick example. I had a little tricycle when I was very young, and riding it on the gravel stones in our driveway was possible with me on that tricycle alone. But when my little sister, 3 years younger, jumped on the back, the bike became too heavy to go over these stones. And so I complained to my mother. And my mother said to me, "Don, you're 3 years older than your sister. You have to learn how to take care of her. And guess what? You're going to be 3 years older for the rest of your life and always be in a kind of caretaker role of people who are around you." So she set the tone for me in my very early life, which I've tried now in all of my writings, not just this dog book, to make sure I not only inform and entertain, but also add an extra measure of underlying values for human beings to develop in their lives. And this book was a perfect forum for certain kinds of values, and I'll share them if it comes up in this interview.
Fantastic. Well, Don, without further ado, The Adventures of Big Dog, Troubles and Triumph. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Well, it takes place in our present home, which is in a suburb of Minneapolis, and we live in a cul-de-sac, so there are houses around the edges of a large hill. And we didn't have a dog, but our neighbors did, a great big golden retriever. And our son went over to that house. As soon as he heard the front door open in the morning, they let the dog out, and the dog was running circles and go wildly around. And our son was over there playing with him. And it was very clear that he wanted a dog. And of course, he would come into the family and talk to my wife and me and say, can't we have a dog? And we had our own reasons to say no, just like my parents said no to me when I was a boy, wanting a dog. And so life was repeating itself. So that's sort of the beginning of the book. The boy wants to have a dog, and he talks his sister into the same thing, and the two of them are ganging up on my wife and me. Well, as it turns out, in the book, the neighbor has to be away for a weekend, and they come over to our house and ask us if we could be so kind as to take care of their dog for a long weekend. And that's the beginning of the book, and of course the children say, yes, yes, and mom and dad are hesitant, but be a good neighbor, you've got to be helpful. So they said, well, all right, but bring over the dishes and the drop cords or whatever you need to take care of a dog, because we don't have a dog of our own. And of course, all this came to pass. And when the dog arrived early in the morning, on a Saturday morning, the children were still in bed. And by the time they got downstairs, this dog had come into the kitchen and was such a tall dog. He went under the kitchen table where the parents were having their breakfast. And he bumped the top of the table, and the orange juice fell off, and the cereal got wet, and plates fell to the floor. And, well, that was the auspicious beginning of what was supposed to be such a wonderful experience. The parents would say yes to getting their own dog. That's the beginning of the book. And when the neighbors left on their journey, the dog stayed in this house for about 3 days, and from morning to night, he got into one trouble after another, and the children saw their big hope of a dog of their own slip away. Well, by the end of the book, it was just about time for the big dog to go back to his own home, the neighbor's house, and a kind of miraculous event took place down in a nearby park where this big dog rescued a child from certain danger because she had slipped away from her mother and was walking into the street. And this dog lured this child back into the park and became a hero.
Wow.
And that's the end of the book. And of course, when the family comes together and the dog is now gone and they sit down to talk about what it was like to have this dog, they talked about all the bad things, but they also talked about the good things that happened in a family council. And moreover, they started talking a little bit about when they had a dog when they were children, and that surprised the children because they didn't know that. But they explained the differences, that they lived on a farm where big dogs were tolerated and so on. And so the conversation then began to slip into the arena of, well, if we were to get a dog, what kind of dog should we get? And they kind of compromised, saying, well, we don't want a big dog. We want something that kind of fits our house a little better. We want a smaller dog. And the story kind of ends there with this kind of a hopeful ending that a new dog would be coming to this house and the children would have a dog to grow up with, just like I had when I grew up, and so many people do for their children this day. So I think this book has great appeal to people who are thinking about getting a dog, as well as those who have a dog and can read it to their children and say, wasn't this a wonderful adventure?
What prompted you to write this big dog story?
Well, I wanted a dog in my life when I was a child because my parents had one when I was born, but he was an old dog, and his name was Skipper. And early in my life, I found I liked soft, touchy things. I liked the teddy bear I have, and the soft blanket, all kids do. And then I kind of gravitated to this old dog who let me touch him anywhere and walk around with him. Made me feel big, even though I was small. And so the only unfortunate thing is this old dog died. So I asked my own parents if we could get another dog. Well, by that time, my dad and mom said, no, all the food we have to eat has to go to you and your 3 siblings who are all younger than you. So we can't take on a dog right now. Well, do you think that discouraged me? Oh, no. I kept pestering them to get a dog. And they kept saying no until a kind of a miracle happened in my own life. A neighbor down the road, I found out, had a litter of puppies. They were black labs. And I ran down there with my bicycle to look. Oh, they were all over the mama and having a wonderful time. And then I learned that they were selling them one at a time, these little pups, to people who had some money. Well, I didn't have money, and I didn't even have permission to have a dog. So I just watched one pup after another disappear, and until all that was left was the runt of the litter. And the people who owned this black lab mother dog knew that I literally wanted a dog. They finally said to me, look, if you want a dog, you can have this dog if your parents say yes. Well, I got on my bicycle and I roared back to the farm and told my folks, I got a free dog for us. And they kind of looked at each other. Yeah, free dog. But I said, I'll do anything to get this dog as my dog. So they gave me a whole list of things I would have to do to take care of the dog, and I made big promises, and I kept them pretty much. And the dog came into my life, and I gave him the name Skipper. So I got a dog not only when I was a little boy, but all the way through my childhood until I went to college. So what I was experiencing later in my life with my own children sort of happened to me earlier. So this dog book has been in my mind for a long time. And when I was with my little children, taking them camping or going on a long trip, I often told them dog stories. They love to hear dog stories. So I thought, someday when I have time, I'm going to write a dog story and put it in a book. And that's the book we're talking about.
Again, here in the line with Grandpa Don Draayer. We're discussing his fantastic book, The Adventures of Big Dog, Troubles and Triumph. Don, next thing that I'd love to go into, and you've mentioned this a number of times, and I also started off the interview by saying, guys, there's so much value and so much wisdom in the words on the page. It's not just a feel-good story. Now, Don, in your opinion, what values do you accent in this Big Dog story?
I can just kind of kick them off to you here. They don't come necessarily in this order in the book, but they're all there. And people who've read the book say it's a value-laden book. Now, one of those values is, being a good neighbor is not always convenient nor easy. That's one value. Another one is that hope and patience in life are tied together. They're like inseparable twins. A third one would be positive family relationships require work on everyone's part. For example, listening to one another, being truthful to one another, forgiving one another, and then working together to find workable solutions, which can be hard work. And just as a side here, in case somebody is listening who might be at this point, making good decisions in selecting a dog is also a very important value. It can make all the difference whether the dog fits the personalities of the people and certainly the size home that you have. And last of all, as this dog book ends, it's a family console where they sit down and review what happened during this long weekend and caused them all the troubles, and where everyone has learned to speak up, to tell the truth, and to kind of bend a little bit to unite this family in their decision. And so it's filled with values that children will pick up on right away, And parents will pick up on right away because Big Dog is so outlandish in the troubles he causes and how they love him in spite of those troubles, that everyone kind of loves the book as you move along. But in the end, everybody says, hey, this is a good book for kids. And I've read this book now many times to little children in my role as an educator. And it always comes away and the teachers say, this is one of the best books we've ever read to the children in this class. So I'm hoping that a lot of families will purchase this book and make it a reality in the lives of their children.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, as we tie out of this fantastic interview, Don, in what ways did your early childhood experiences change your life?
I listened to my parents because I was the oldest son and daughter, and on this truck farm, there was always work to be done, and they always made sure that I was helping them, whether it was weeding onions or harvesting vegetables or peeling apples for canning purposes. So I was brought up as a helper kind of person. And then what happened was I went to a country school where the report card had on it all your grades for your subjects. And when I brought that card home, my mother said, no, I don't want to see that part of the card. I only want to see one grade, and that's the effort grade. Because if you put enough effort into your life and into your studies, you'll do well, and all those other grades will all fall into their place over time. So I got the idea my mother liked teaching and had a pretty good idea of what good teaching was, and taught me that effort and conscientious study was an important thing. And lo and behold, I ended up becoming a teacher in my own life. And that pleased her, and it was a perfect fit for me, until I decided I wanted to go into administration and apply the things that I had learned as a teacher in a school setting, first elementary and then middle school, and I eventually became a high school principal, a large high school in Chicago suburb. And so I've been in education my whole life. Meanwhile, I had gotten a master's degree and a doctorate in education, and became a school superintendent back here in Minnesota, where I had grown up. And for 24 years, I was a superintendent in a suburban school setting where I had to do a lot of writing and speaking. And at the end of those 24 years, some people were talking about retirement, but I wasn't. I was still feeling kind of young in my 50s. So as it turned out, I was invited to become a member of the faculty at the University of Minnesota to help teach new young men and women who were interested in administration and how to become good principals and good superintendents. And I did that for quite a while, but I learned that they expected me to be there every week. And I was kind of moving towards semi-retirement, and I didn't want to miss some things that we could do if we had longer vacations. So I resigned that position, but along came another organization in Minneapolis and said, you really like children and know children so very well, and our organization would like to have you speak on their behalf to audiences around the United States about the assets children need in their lives. And I agreed to do that. That was kind of exciting, traveling around the country. And I ended up giving 200 speeches over a couple of years, gone out of my home for a day or two. And again, I found out that I would make long-range plans to be gone, and then in the meantime, a grandchild of mine or two would have a piano recital or a birthday party, and I was missing them. And I said, look, I want my life to focus around my grandchildren. I got to get out of this business, and I did. So I started writing for a local newspaper, a monthly column called Grandpa's Letters, and my writing skills came into play there, and I got a lot of positive reviews from them. And I wrote several other books, particularly about those that focused on developing the brain of a child in the first 5 years of life and thereafter. And it involves reading, talking, singing to the children. It changes the brain so that the child, when they finally get into K-12 education, they're ready to fly and soar. So I wrote a book about those children, 0 to 5, another book. So I did many books. But I finally came back saying, now I've got grandchildren of my own, and I ought to write that dog book that my children have been asking me about for such a long time. And I did. And here we are talking about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, there's one more thing that, not to, pat myself in the back, because these things aren't done by yourself. There's a Teacher of the Year for the whole United States. Well, school superintendents have the same kind of plan. And every state sends in one of their superintendents to kind of be matched up against other superintendents. And as lo and behold, I was sent in one year and was invited to come in to be one of 4 to be interviewed and to give a speech on over the public radio system there. And then at the national convention, held in San Francisco, the 4 of us were standing on the stage, and they pulled out the envelope to read who was the National Superintendent of the Year. And by golly, it was me. And I had to stand up and I was standing before the group along with the other 3. And I had to give a little speech, and that for a whole year then I was invited by school districts across America to come and give speeches in their communities. So I've really had a very full life, a very wonderful life. We've traveled overseas, taught children, my wife and I, in Japan. The United States Air Force had schools over there for Air Force children. So my dream when I was a little child was to see the world and make a difference in the world. And I'll just say, God bless me to make it happen.
There you have it, guys. So much wisdom and so much value packed in to the confines of a wonderful book. I mean, you know what you have to do. The Adventures of Big Dog, Troubles and Triumph is the title you have to pick up. And Grandpa Don Draayer is the author you have to thank for bringing it to your table. You surely will not be disappointed. A wonderful journey for you to embark upon with your family, but a fantastic gift for you to get for someone else's. So do yourself a favor and pick up your copy as soon as you can. Don, this has been truly a pleasure, man. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Thank you very much.